I'm your cult boyfriend. Welcome to another live stream. Oh man, I'm already tongue tied. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. Today we're going to be talking about the best gangster films, and I'm going to do a Quentin Tarantino ranking as well. Really for no good reason, I guess. Um, Other than I'm interested in Quentin Tarantino's movies, I like him quite a bit. Um, Hope you guys are having a good day. Didn't really give anyone a whole lot of notice with this live stream, just kind of jumping right into it. Um, you seem to be enjoying the live streams, and I've been enjoying doing them. Been getting good feedback on the playbacks and stuff like that. But this is what we're dealing with right now. Go full screen for you for a moment. We got a lot of good movies here. So when I was putting this list together, I realized that the definition of gangster movie is extremely loose. I saw a bunch that were like, oh boy, is that what I want to do? No, I want to do this one. I saw a bunch on there that were not what I consider like gangster movies. Like Heat was on a lot of lists. Rafifi, Reservoir Dogs, things that I consider more heist or simply crime. The three films I just named, I really liked. I would add them. They would probably be all S tier movies, but I don't really think that they're gangster movies, I suppose. Hey, it's good to see you again. Well, hopefully I could be slightly entertaining. Hopefully we can be entertaining for you. But it's really good to see you again. But yeah, but we're gonna do this tier very quickly. I hope everyone is having a decent start to their week. I was off from work today, so that's nice. Um, I'm gonna get started on this tier, and in the chat or in the comments on the replay, just let me know. Uh, Let me know if you disagree with me or if you agree with me. Films I may have forgotten, as well as um, like what are your S tier movies? What are your D or F ones? Those kinds of things. But let's have fun little cinephile discussions now. So first and foremost, we have The Godfather coming in. We're coming in heavy. We're starting very strong, and this shouldn't surprise like anyone who's ever seen a movie. I have to put it at the S tier. I think that The Godfather is just as good as everyone says it is. It's pretty incredible. So maybe I should go over really quickly the cool thing about gangster movies. Well, there's a lot of cool things about gangster movies. I think that if I had a channel back, um, God, when I was a teenager, it would have been like gangster movie focused or something. With gangster movies, you can deal with cool themes like family, disintegration of honor, the American immigrant experience, the inevitability of crime. So like, there's a fatalistic attitude to a lot of gangster movies. There's a lot of pessimism, possibly even cosmic pessimism. And I see you there. Are you gonna do any rock band players? I don't know what you're asking me. I really don't know. Um, Sorry about that. But there are a lot of cool themes with gangster movies, and Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather is, I think, one of the best examples of not only like a film about the life of the American immigrant, but also the disintegration of um of family under capitalism, possibly. Like there's a lot of cool critiques you can make through The Godfather through these kind of gangster films, and the gangster genre, I don't know if it's, like, dying or if it's moved to television. I think it's mostly moved to television with, Sopranos and Peaky Blinders and all that stuff, but, you don't see a whole lot of gangster movies anymore, so it is kind of interesting. Maybe we should kinda think about why, like, the new Hollywood movement was so obsessed with gangster movies, people like Coppola and Scorsese and De Palma, why gangster movies seem to be a lot more significant back then, a lot more significant than they are now. Um because it does seem to have fallen out of favor, but still, I see it in television a lot. Uh, But yeah, The Godfather is amazing. Brando, and I think James Caan actually gives the best performance of the film as Sonny. So, not gonna go on too much about The Godfather because we all know it's great, and I'm not surprising anybody by putting it at the S tier, but The Irishman, Scorsese's film, I'm actually feeling C tier for The Irishman. I'm not huge on The Irishman. Uh, I thought it was decent, but I thought, like, a lot of the themes that he explored in that movie, he explored in silence and in a much more, like, thorough and sophisticated sort of way. Um, I think I talked about Scorsese pretty recently in one of the streams. I think that a lot of his later period movies are like deathbed confessions where it's an examination of a filmmaker who's like almost pathetically afraid of death. They're really morbid kind of epics that that I feel are overlong, mostly because I feel like Scorsese is desperately trying to reestablish some sort of authoritative idea of legacy. Um, I just think he's very scared of dying, and I think The Irishman is a film that is like it's of course it's well put together. It's a Scorsese picture. It's just I wouldn't even call it self indulgent. I think that the film is kind of it's a petrified sort of film. It's completely scared of death. I have to put it down at C because I do think it is not only too long, but yeah, end stage Scorsese kind of just goes over the same stuff over and over again, which is fine. It's a huge concept that he's dealing with, being mortality, but there's only so much you can do with that concept. And next we have Get Shorty, which I think got the green light because I guess a lot of Elmore Leonard novels made it to the big screen in the '90s. Elmore Leonard kind of ruled that decade in a large way, kind of like how Michael Crichton did, so far as book to film adaptations. Get Shorty is kind of charming, I guess. It's kind of goofy. It's kind of funny. It's not very good, and I'm gonna put it at the end of the C tier because it's a cool kind of lampooning of Hollywood and how Hollywood. There are some cool postmodern qualities because John Travolta plays Chili Palmer and he's like in love with the film Touch of Evil and he really wants to work in Hollywood. So we're looking at how how Hollywood informs like mafia culture, but also mafia culture largely informs what the cinema is. So it is kind of interesting. There is a postmodern dialogue going on there. It's just I would say it's funny, but largely, forgettable and compositionally unimpressive. I also have Gotti because when I was, like, researching movies to put on here, just in case I forgot any, this one was on, like, every list of what to put on here, and I'm like, "I guess I need something in the D section." Goofy, whatever, just poor John Travolta. We were just talking about him being pretty decent and Get Shorty, and of course, we know that Gotti's a train wreck. Um, yeah, I'm not above shitting on Gotti. It's a bad movie. I need something in the D, and then there it is. There it is. Um, can't disagree with that. Godfather is elite. It certainly is elite. It's pretty awesome. I really like The Godfather. I watched it because AI was dreamy, because you were dreamy, but I took away so much from it, and I still do with each rewatch. Yeah, it's so good. I get so much from it too. I think you get so many different characters from so many different age groups and kind of from different backgrounds as well. That like I think the older you get, the more you and the more life experience you get, that the more you understand these other kind of tragic Shakespearean characters in Francis Ford Coppola's film. I know when I was younger and a bit more hot-headed, I was all about Sonny, but the older I get and the more complicated life seems, um, people like Michael and Kay become a lot more interesting to identify with. The film's just magnificent. Marlboro, New York, back in the '70s. The Sopranos loosely based on that. Yeah, The Sopranos is a great show. Um, Sopranos is really good. I like it a lot. interesting to compare to Silence. Not a huge Irishman fan either. Yeah, I just when I watched, I think Silence is really good. I think Silence is extraordinary. The Irishman, its themes just it seemed to be like he was retreading, he was going backwards in his philosophy, and I didn't think we solved a lot of the problems that Scorsese was meditating over. I didn't think, like, we solved them, but I thought we thoroughly explored them in Silence, and then in Irishman, it's another, like, 4-hour, uh, examination of the same problems. Would love a Marty rating one day. I was thinking of doing that today, but, um, I don't know why I didn't do it. Probably because I feel like I need to rewatch some of Marty's movies. There are some that I haven't seen in a really long time that would be unfair of me to rank. Like, I haven't watched Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore in years and years and years and years and years, and I haven't watched, Who's That Knocking at My Door, I think it's called. I haven't watched those 2 in a million years, and I don't wanna put it somewhere that, like, I later regret. And also Bringing Out the Dead, I haven't watched that fucking since the early 2000s, but that'll happen. Al Pacino is dreamy. Yeah, yeah, he definitely is. I mean, for sure, for sure. Al Pacino at his hottest is probably Dog Day Afternoon, right? But, that was another movie I saw pop up on gangster lists. I'm like, That's a heist movie, guys. That's nowhere that I don't think there's any organized crime in that. In fact, that's the most, like, disorganized film about crime I've ever seen. But Al Pacino was dreamy. I didn't know how much I craved surrealism in gangster films until The Sopranos. Yeah, the dream sequences, I think are extraordinary in The Sopranos. What's his name, like, David Chase or whatever? I think that's the showrunner of The Sopranos. He really outdid himself with the dream sequences there. You can spend a lot of time analyzing those. Those are fun to pick apart. I kinda wish that, like, Luis Buñuel did a gangster movie or maybe a proper gangster movie. Maybe he did, and I just haven't seen it, and I'm just sounding completely ignorant, but I think that more surrealism should belong in gangster movies. I would call something like Scarface so fanatical and so materialistic that it borders on surrealism. American Gangster, Ridley Scott movie, I think, but, Russell Crowe and Denzel Washington. Um, God, I don't hate this movie at all. It's just I don't think that Ridley Scott's, he's not an incapable director, it's just his style doesn't really fit the gangster genre too well. Um, I don't know how else to explain it. Here's the problem with American Gangster for me is that like the cop, I think Russell Crowe, I think that Ridley Scott's film was far more compelling when we were with the cop than we were when we were with the gangster, which is like a really missed opportunity. I mean, I have to put it in C just above Get Shorty, but like it's not a terrible movie by any means, but I don't think that Ridley Scott I, I I'm not a huge Ridley Scott fan, actually. I think that Alien and Blade Runner are pretty good movies, but American Gangster, there are just a lot of missed opportunities, and you have Denzel there, like, giving it his all. He's doing just as well as Russell Crowe, but the film is just, I think, far more invested and interested in what's going on with the cop, and, maybe he thought he was doing a little bit of Heat, but, like, you're missing all of man's sophistications with it, but I don't really like American Gangster. I also really hate Sexy Beast with Ben Kingsley. I don't It's one of the most overrated movies ever. I'm not sure why people like it so much. Uh, I think it's boring, and I think that it's, like, pretty damn simplistic, but here's the big heat. Fritz Lang's film. I think that Fritz Lang or Fritz Lang, however you wanna say it, I don't think it really matters. I think he made excellent American movies, and, The Big Heat is a masterpiece. It's his best American movie. You get a lot of film noir from the film, but you also get like and from film noir, I think you kind of inherit the cosmic pessimism that is so necessary to like great gangster films. And this is gonna go up in the A category. I think it's a great Fritz Lang movie. I think it's like 50% gangster, 50% noir, but like those are almost those have so many similarities that it'd be kind of pointless to 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 scrutinize, the differences between them, but, I think as a Fritz Lang movie, it's an S, but as a gangster movie, it's an A, but, that's a needless thing to say here, but I love The Big Heat so much, and Eastern Promises, I'm gonna put, um, also in the A, right next to The Big Heat. That's a great Cronenberg film. I think about the Russian mob. Great Viggo Mortensen, Naomi Watts, and Vincent Cassel performance. There's some great brutality there. Uh, that was kind of Cronenberg's hired gun era, but I think it's really gripping. I think the composition is kind of haunting, and I like some of the more brutal horror elements that are apparent within Cronenberg's natural composition that appear within Eastern Promises. And Casino, I'm gonna put in the S as well. I love Casino. I think I'm crazy because I think Casino is better, not like much better than Goodfellas, but I think it's better than Goodfellas, and I might like appreciate the sleaziness of it. I might appreciate how much more pathetic the characters in Casino kind of outwardly are. Like kind of how watching it, you kind of feel like a little bit, yeah, like sleazy, like a little bit gross about it, you know? It's like a sweatier, I think more philosophically nihilistic version of Goodfellas. Casino to me is top tier Scorsese, and I think that he was kind of relentless in Casino. I really do. Oh god, a Buñuel gangster movie would have been a game changer. It really would have been. I mean, there are elements of that in Belle de Jour, right? I think that Catherine Deneuve's character was messing around with a gangster, for most of the movie, but I want, like, a straight up gangster one, right? Like, would have been so good, especially with his constant criticisms of the bourgeois and of class structures and, hierarchies. It would have been so interesting to see. Damn, I gotta watch Casino because I love Goodfellas a little too much. There's nothing wrong with Goodfellas, it's just that, like, after you watch Casino, you might think Goodfellas is a little too clean. I don't know, Casino is just so, dirty to me, and the characters are pretty damn pathetic, and I kind of admire that in a gangster epic. I've heard a lot of people say that about Casino recently. I haven't. I haven't. I normally get, like, a weird side eye or, like, a super sarcastic response on, with online cinephiles about it. I haven't heard that, but it's cool if that's, like, the new, popular, opinion. I think that Casino's a bit better than Goodfellas, which isn't to say that Goodfellas isn't well composed, it's just that Casino, I think Scorsese was taking a lot of chances with it. Casino still has some great moments, but it's the beginning of Scorsese's bloat. Goodfellas, I think, is overall better constructed. Like, I wouldn't disagree probably. Like Goodfellas is so well constructed and the pace is so well maintained, like through its editing montages that that it's kind of a bit too untouchable. I don't know. I like that Casino has like features a Martin Scorsese who I think is like totally willing to sacrifice pace for ultra violence or for like some sort of pathetic character development. Like I don't know. I think that Casino's just has a bit more definitely edge, but also I think that how grimy and gross I feel that the movie overall is, there's like a philosophical deepness to it that Goodfellas lacks, but it's better constructed. Goodfellas is better constructed. It's almost too well constructed. Is Casino based on a true story? Oh, they are flawed characters and compared to Goodfellas? Yeah, I think that like what Joe Pesci plays like Nicky in Casino and Tommy in Goodfellas. Like Nicky in Casino, there's like no redeeming qualities to him, you know? At least you kind of enjoy being around Tommy. You say he's kind of like this weird little wrecking ball. Nicky is just a gigantic piece of shit. And Robert De Niro's character is just so pathetic. So is Sharon Stone. So is James Woods. Um Not to say that the people in Goodfellas are, like, perfectly well composed, I just think they're too clean about it, right? I can't imagine someone watching Casino and thinking for a moment that they wanna be a gangster, you know? I don't know if it's based on a true story, though. I forget. I'm not sure. I'm sure if it was, there were a lot of, liberties taken with the material. So many of my Twitter mutuals love Casino more. I guess I'm basic with my love for Goodfellas. You're not, or maybe I just need, Liotta. See, that's the thing, right? Ray Liotta was so empathetic in Goodfellas, like, there's such an emotional core to the film, and he's really easy to identify with. With Casino, like, that there are, like, emotional, like, dimensions to all the characters there, but, uh they're almost too pathetic to identify with, and I kind of like that in a movie, and I don't think Scorsese really ever did that again. He may have tried with Wolf of Wall Street, but I thought that Marty was pretending to be a young and energetic filmmaker when he was filming, Wolf of Wall Street. I didn't believe he was at all interested in what he was showing me. But Casino, that's a kind of fanatical movie that I'm kind of, always been in love with. La Samurai, which I also don't really consider a gangster movie, but I saw it appearing on a bunch of lists. And, I guess fair enough, Melville was a very good gangster filmmaker. We have a different Melville on here that I think fits the bill a bit more, and I think if it was just like a general list of great movies, well, Samurai, I really love it, would be in the S tier. Alan Delon is, like, extraordinary, but as a gangster movie, like, I don't know if it if it, meets all the requirements necessary of the genre. But, I mean, La Samurai is a wonderfully meditative, ruminative, and stylish, film about an assassin who was extremely lonely. I think it's a great character study of loneliness, and the character is so removed and isolated from us because of the style, because of the composition that we can never really, and because of his, occupation, that we're never really able to feel where he's coming from. I love La Samurai. I just don't really think it's a gangster movie. And I did put this together. I just put it together based on things that I saw around on other lists. La Samurai is a great movie, though. The Departed. Um, Man, I'm torn between where to put it here. Top of C tier, bottom of B tier. But right now, I'm feeling top of C tier. Uh, I think it's better than The Irishman, right? I think I don't think it's a terrible movie. Um, I think it's fun to watch, but it's not entirely fun to, like, examine or interact with. Uh, it's super flashy without a whole lot of depth to it, but I really do like it. Um, it's okay, it's okay. I think to me, it's just a C tier movie. Um don't really have anything interesting to say about The Departed, and I really don't trust anybody who does say they have interesting things to say about The Departed. I just think it's probably a cool movie. Yeah, State of Grace, which, will go at the end of the C tier for me. State of Grace, the reason why anyone should watch it, it's another film about the Irish mob like Departed was. But, Gary Oldman is excellent in it as, like, a Joe Pesci, hot-headed, Sonny Corleone type. He's excellent in the movie, and his brother is played by Ed Harris. It's worth watching just to see Gary Oldman's take on a James Caan kind of impersonation. He does it really interestingly. He's fascinating to watch in State of Grace. Overall, I don't think it's composed very well or has too many interesting things to say, but I think Gary Oldman is beyond excellent in the film. I think Gary Oldman's great in it. Sean Penn's good too, but, like, Gary Oldman, my god. And now we're at Bob LaFlambier. I think a Melville movie that falls more in line with gangster pictures, and, I'll put this one at the end of the A. I love Jean-Pierre Melville, and Bob LaFlambier was, like, the first Jean-Pierre Melville movie I ever watched. It was actually the first Criterion I ever bought, based on a recommendation, um from a commentary track I was listening to, but I can't really remember it right now. But Bob LaFlambier was excellent. I thought, I obviously, like, a cosmically pessimist character study of Bob the Gambler. I thought it was really, really good. I didn't see it on here, but what do you think of, Le Samurai's closest, descent, Ghost Dog: Way of the Samurai? Yeah, it's not on here. I've been asked this a couple times. I really need to rewatch it, but I'd be, like, lying if I said it wasn't the last, Jarmusch film that I think of. Like, it's weird in Jarmusch's catalog. Like, when I think of Jim Jarmusch, I think of, like, cool, independent absurdist cinema, you know? I think of Down by Law and, Stranger Than Paradise. Ghost Dog, I've only watched it once in my life over 10 years ago, and I haven't felt like watching it again, but I've been asked it a couple times, so I don't have a good enough reading of the film to give anyone any idea of how I felt about it, and I think I saw it before I knew who Jim Jarmusch was, you know, so I didn't really have a frame of reference for the film when I first watched it, but I'll watch it again. I like Forest Whitaker, if nothing else. I like Boardwalk Empire. So The Sopranos is cool in the sense that, like, there were 2 dudes who worked on it, right? At least in the writer's room, it was, Winters or something, I forget his name, but the showrunner of Boardwalk Empire and Matthew Weiner for Mad Men, who later, you know, obviously went off to do Mad Men and Boardwalk Empire. And I think that's perfect because I think if you mashed Boardwalk Empire and Mad Men together, you get The Sopranos. And it's cool to see where that the writers' room, like, you can kind of pick out whose input was coming from where. I like Boardwalk Empire. I liked it when it was on. I haven't rewatched it or anything, but I remember being really impressed by how they handled, like, Jimmy, Michael Pitt's character in it. I thought was really cool, and, his buddy his buddy, with the Phantom of the Opera mask was awesome. I guess I like that whole part the most, right? Because I like Jimmy's mom a lot. Um, Really interesting, like Oedipal kind of, stuff. It's weird. Oedipal complexes fit into the gangster genre really well. I'm not sure why, but Terrence Winter, that's his name. I was remarkably close. That's a name I haven't thought of in years and years, but thank you. Little Caesar, Edward G. Robinson is electric in that movie. I'm gonna put it behind La Samurai in the B category. Edward G. Robinson is so fucking amazing in Little Caesar. It's a great early sound picture, but I think that it really laid down the foundation, like the building blocks of the gangster genre. And I think Little Caesar did it pretty wonderfully. It's pretty manic and a little wild. So Miller's Crossing, I'm gonna put right now at the top of the A tier. I really like Miller's Crossing. Um, I think it's Gabriel Byrne's best performance, and he's an actor who I like a lot, and John Turturro's great in it, so is Marcia Gay Harden, and it might be either this or No Country for Old Men are my favorite Coen Brothers movies. I think that Miller's Crossing is funny, and I think its philosophy is really interesting because we get to deal with absurdism and, like, absurdism proper, right? So, like, I see a bit of The Fall here, I see a bit of, like, Albert Camus in here, but I also see, a fair deal of, like, those fatalistic qualities that I was talking about as well. You know, cosmically, pessimistically, fatalistic. Um, I love the film so much, and it's a lot of fun to interact with. I have a whole analysis of Miller's Crossing on my channel from years ago, but it's a lot of fun to interact with. What a sophisticated feature. It's really, really good. Yeah, um, and I like the composition a lot too. Uh, I don't I don't really remember the Coens going back to those same kind of peculiar waters for their composition, but it's really damn good. The Godfather Part 2, I feel so boring with this Godfather stuff, but that's also going to the S tier. It's remarkable. Once again, just as good as everybody says it was. I prefer the first one over it, but that's no big deal. The Godfather Part 2 is excellent. I think that Al Pacino's performance in Godfather Part 2 is like one for the history books. My God, it is so icy and cold and sad and evil. John Cazale as Fredo. That's where the heart of the entire Godfather franchise actually is, the series of films. Godfather Part 2, of course, we go back to examining family and the American immigrant experience and treachery and betrayal in in Shakespearean kind of ways that are, I think, just so um, so striking. It's it's such a great film. Godfather Part 2 rules. I know somebody who grew up in a mobster neighborhood in the '70s and has said that Mean Streets, fuck man, Killing of a Chinese Bookie isn't here. I forgot about that though. Forgot about that movie. I like John Cassavetes a lot, and Ghost Dog are the most realistic depictions of gangsters in movies. Ghost Dog? I gotta rewatch it. Like, I'm not remembering it very well. But fuck, Killing of a Chinese Bookie I really like. I don't think it'd be anywhere above the B tier, but I would have liked to talk about John Cassavetes for a moment. And Ben Gazzara was great in it. Yeah, but Killing of a Chinese Bookie is about a man in debt to the mob rather than the mobsters themselves. But everybody seems to have such a loose idea of what gangster films mean, and I'm the same way. There are films here that probably shouldn't be here, you know? But, like, I saw Heat on, like, every top 10 list of the best gangster films, and that just doesn't feel like a gangster film. Feels more like a crime epic or, a heist movie proper. Killing of a Chinese Bookie, I would have included here just so I can talk about John Cassavetes, and it would have been B, and I would have probably just said, that I really like the movie. Probably wouldn't have said anything too interesting about it. But that's interesting. Those are the most realistic depictions of gangsters in movies. I don't know if I would look for realism in a gangster movie, but hey, Mean Streets is next up, and there is a lot of realism here too, and I think it's lovely. I think I like Miller's Crossing more, but it's going in the A tier. This is really fun for Scorsese because we do get that duality that is consistent throughout Scorsese's career, and, it's the duality of, or maybe the marriage of religion to ultraviolence and crime, but, it's about those 2, distinct features of virtue. And I think that every Martin Scorsese movie is secretly and obviously not so secretly, they're about God. There are holy moments in all of his films. I think that when we see slow-mo in a Martin Scorsese movie, he's either showing us, like, the presence of God or its ultimate absence. I think it can go back and forth there. But, I think that Mean Streets, at least, is pretty overt in its religious ruminations, and also very, very unforgiving in its ultra-violent depictions of, Johnny Boy, right? And, the fatalism of the film, I think, is extraordinary to interact with. I love Mean Streets. I keep thinking there are some unforgettable moments in Scorsese movies, and then they're mostly small, like, you don't necessarily remember the ultra violence. I remember Harvey Keitel's character in Mean Streets, like, burning his hand or passing his hand over fire and talking about, hell and what hell's supposed to feel like, and it's like a character coming to terms with the fact that if hell exists, I'm gonna have to decide now whether or not I'm going to it, and I think Scorsese was dealing with the same things in his own way. There's a lot of Scorsese on this list because we got another one right now with Gangs of New York, which I think I like more than most people, but I still don't, like, love it, love it. I think it's really good, and I'm gonna put it at the top of the B. Daniel Day-Lewis is amazing. Leo, I've never been a fan of Leonardo DiCaprio's acting, not really. I think he's at best serviceable in movies, and in Gangs of New York, I think he's pretty weak. I think Cameron Diaz outacts, Leonardo DiCaprio, and I never understood why Cameron Diaz got so much shit for that movie. She was fine in it. But I would understand the criticisms of calling it, like, bloated and stuff like that, but I find it just very entertaining and an an interesting an investigation of probably, like, the creation of a part of the American psychology that is in part organized crime, right? That is in part, born of those, of some pretty psychopathic ends. I think I view part 2 and the first Godfather as one piece in the same way that Tarantino views Kill Bill. Well, we're gonna do a Tarantino ranking after this video. I don't even view Kill Bill as 2 pieces, but I'll get into that later. I think The Godfather and Godfather Part 2, I understand viewing them as one piece, but I think they're pretty distinct. Um, I think themes carry over, but right, the Godfather 1 is about, outside forces trying to destroy the family and mostly succeeding, and then Godfather Part 2 is about the family eating itself from the inside. Can you wax poetic at some point about postmodernism and gangster films? Yeah, give me, like, a minute. Maybe I'll do that when Quentin Tarantino comes up, which is, like, pretty soon. Also, Chinese, Bookie, I put on S tier, as well as Mean Streets. Mean Streets, man, if you caught me, like, a year or 2 ago, it probably would've been S tier. I decided to be needlessly harsh here. I like Chinese Bookie a lot, but even on, like, a John Cassavetes, my favorite Cassavetes films are Husbands and A Woman Under the Influence and Faces. I always forget about Faces, but Faces is, ugh, beautiful. Yeah, Gangs of New York has a great opening scene. I think Daniel Day-Lewis is on fire there. And that was back when, like, Liam Neeson loved to pop up like that in Kingdom of Heaven and stuff, loved to pop up as this, like, patriarch that gets unceremoniously murdered, all for the benefit of our lead character. That was, like, the thing that he would do. Maybe it started with being Qui-Gon Jinn, and then he just kept doing that same fucking dead patriarch thing. But it was good in Gangs of New York. I liked how it played out. I actually think Leo's best performances are in Wolf of Wall Street and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. In Hollywood, he's okay because those roles are more tongue in cheek and impulsive. Hollywood, he's all right. Yeah, there's a lot of tongue in cheek in it, and I think that it allows for Leo's. I think kind of he's always so performative, but his character Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is this like self-obsessed, washed up actor, right? So like the performative qualities that are normally in Leo performances really benefit that film. So I like that performance a lot too. Leo just doesn't have the depth to fit in with Scorsese's grit the way, yeah, De Niro, Pesci, or Keitel could. Yeah, I never truly accepted Leo as the new muse for Scorsese. I think his best performance in a Scorsese movie was probably The Aviator, but still, there's a lot of flaws with his performance there. But I like The Aviator movie a lot. Once Upon a Time in America. I'm gonna split up this Godfather thing here. I'm gonna put it in between Godfather 1 and 2. Once Upon a Time in America is a beautiful film. Sergio Leone gangster film. My God, James Woods in that movie. Played was his character named Nick too? There's a lot of Nicks in gangster movies. I think that was his name. He's fascinating to engage with. I love the sense of camaraderie. Obviously, we're dealing with betrayal. We're dealing with all of these different kinds of facets of the gangster genre that have always kind of existed within the gangster genre. But we're doing it with like Sergio's weird kind of language, right? And I say weird in like in a positive way. Uh, how do I put this? Um, Well, I guess since the film starts off at an opium den, right? There is some sort of airiness. There's a highness to the film, not necessarily like a dreamlike quality, but that there is like some sort of demented, distorted fairy tale nature to the film, especially how it's kind of told within flashbacks that I don't know if we're supposed to completely take wholesale and believe fully. I think that the whole film is just glowing with tragedy. I think Once Upon a Time in America is an unbelievably good gangster film, one of the very best gangster films of all time. Um, I do think that, like, the reason why I would put The Godfather above it is for the the strength of the performances involved, and also I think that, while Coppola had a lot of style, Leone was, like, dripping with style, and I think that, like, on purpose, deliberately, there are parts of Once Upon a Time in America where the style can make certain characters feel remote, and that's because 'cause they're supposed to feel remote, right? I think that The Godfather is more, it's probably just more accessible, is what I'm saying. It's easier to identify with the characters and therefore be more devoted and invested in the narrative. But Once Upon a Time in America is great. There's no flaws. Like what I just said isn't a flaw. It's just a great movie. Now we're at a Quentin Tarantino feature, Pulp Fiction, which I'm gonna have to put in the S tier as well, just behind Godfather 2. I love Pulp Fiction. Uh, I consider this a gangster movie, not necessarily because, we deal so heavily with organized crime, but mostly because, Pulp Fiction is this kind of beautiful postmodern film where we play with the archetypes of the cinema itself. Postmodern gangster movies, I think, can be really interesting, especially when we realize that, like, a large part of what we think of as the gangster, a large part of what normal people think of as gangsters were, were invented by the cinema largely, or at least they were refined and perfected by the cinema. Like, everybody has their idea of who a mafioso is, right? But, like, most of us have never met one. Um, the cinema largely informs what we think of when we think of crime, even. And I think Pulp Fiction's very interesting because it's a bunch of these different archetypes that have largely informed the American culture in conversation with each other, in some kind of deconstructionist conversation with each other, where each archetype involved is being kind of not truly transcended, but I think both equal parts humiliated and worshipped in a very large way, and that's what makes Pulp Fiction to me really interesting, because of all these different qualities, because it's about, like, the history of cinema, the history of pulp cinema in conversation with each other, and just what kind of havoc that they could cause. But postmodernism and gangster movies, you don't see it, like, a whole hell of a lot, mostly because I think that The Godfather and, Goodfellas, postmodern movies kind of have to rely on more, traditional themes. Like, I don't think you get to the point where postmodernism could take control. That's why Tarantino is so good here. Mostly a great gangster movie is about, like, disillusionment, or about, like, the destruction of a family, the destruction of the American experience under capitalism, but it's normally about how you get to that place. We don't normally start at, like, that place, but I think postmodernism has to. Like, in a film like Pulp Fiction, compared to any Scorsese movie that is also secretly about God, in Pulp Fiction, God is a non-issue, and that's the way it has to be in postmodernism. And since most gangster films deal with Italian people who are Italian immigrants who are, like, a pretty Catholic sort of people, you're never going to get over that God hurdle, right? Like, so Pulp Fiction, Tarantino, God is always a non-issue in in um in Tarantino movies. There are just so many things standing in the way of gangster films truly kind of experimenting with postmodernism. You get it sometimes, like the French New Wave kind of did it, but Tarantino, I think, did it most exceptionally. It's not a treatise against God or against the family. It's just that mostly those things are non-issues in it, and it's also mostly about screen archetypes in a constant sort of dialogue with each other that flows through non-linear chaotic lines. I really like Pulp Fiction a lot. In fact, I droned on so much about it, I'm gonna put it above Once Upon a Time in America and piss off a couple people in the chat, but not above The Godfather 1. Godfather 1's just great. I don't like Road to Perdition. I don't like that movie. Sam Mendes, correct? I don't think I like Sam Mendes very much. I think he's, bad. Did he do this movie, or am I just making that up? Yeah, he did. Jude Law's kind of cool in it. I don't know. I just really don't like Road to Perdition. I think that the composition is really weak. I think that it's, you can tell it's derived from a graphic novel, I think. Because graphic novels, I outside of, like, Alan Moore, and I don't really think have a whole lot of depth to them. That's, like, a pretty bad thing to say, but I really don't. I think you can tell that this is, like, comic book mentality. I really do, and, it's personal. I hate Tom Hanks as well. That doesn't help the movie. I think he's a terrible actor and a terrible screen presence, but yeah. This is Coppola checking in. Well, we're doing good, Coppola. Got 2 Coppolas on the S tier right now. Is God really a non-issue in Pulp Fiction? There's a divine intervention as a deus ex machina. It may be insincere on Tarantino's part, but it's still within the film. That is very true. But I just never take it seriously. Maybe you're supposed to though, right? Because, Vincent didn't take it seriously either, and that's what happened. You're kinda right, Bat Devil Spawn. It might be the only movie where God is actually is actually an issue. But I think it's insincere on Tarantino's part. I think that that falls more in line with, like, the architect of, I'm sorry, not the archetype of Jules. I don't know. I don't buy it. I don't buy it within the film, but fuck, I think I was talking about Tarantino overall, and I didn't necessarily mean to say Pulp Fiction specifically because, yeah, that's, like, a movie where divine judgment is definitely actually used. My bad, but, I still don't think it's I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it. But then there's a bunch of people who say that, Marcellus Wallace's soul is in the briefcase or whatever. I just don't even know if God appears in a Tarantino movie, are we actually talking about God or are we talking about, like, cinema's idea of God? Because that's, like, far removed from it. Or, like, are we talking about the devil or cinema's idea of the devil? That kind of thing. Because I don't see a whole lot of sincerity within it, but since they're all archetypes doing, like, standard archetypal things or deconstructionist things, I can't imagine that God should be viewed in any way as legitimate, at least in a real world sense, right? Is Eastern Promises postmodernist? I mean, I don't think so. I don't think Eastern Promises is postmodernist. Like, the ones that we've covered so far that I would say have those qualities are Pulp Fiction, obviously, Get Shorty, because of the context of the film. Um, like, Scorsese is a master and incorporates a lot of, like, postmodern techniques into a lot of his films, including Casino and stuff like that. You can argue Miller's Crossing, but maybe not. Thoughts on A Bronx Tale? I saw that pop up on a bunch of lists, and I haven't watched it in a million years. I have 0 thoughts on A Bronx Tale, but it seems to be pretty well regarded, you know? And just to get back to, like, Eastern Promises real quick, I don't know if, David Cronenberg is a very postmodern filmmaker. I'm not sure if I would call him that. Like, Videodrome would have those qualities the most, I would think, right? I agree that it's forced within the movie, and it's hard to take as real depth. Yeah, like, like, because I think that God is also an archetype within cinema, so, like, I could still be right that God is a non-issue, but it's still you're right, it's still featured within the film, but I don't think we should take it seriously. I think we should take it as cinema's idea or interpretation of God. It does play with those fatalistic qualities of the gangster genre, at least, because Vincent doesn't listen, and we all know what happened to Vincent. It's almost like Vincent had to fulfill his role as a gangster archetype even, right? There's a lot going on in Pulp Fiction that I don't know if Quentin Tarantino is even aware of, you know? He just wrote a script he thought was cool, and, like, people like me think it's one of the most interesting things ever. Scarface, I love Scarface. Whatever, I'm gonna put it above Godfather 2, but beneath Once Upon a Time in America. Um, I talked about it in the last stream a little bit, but I love the pairing of Oliver Stone writing and Brian De Palma directing. It's obviously a fanatical, obsessive, eccentric, critique of capitalism that is such a bizarre critique that it not only starts to believe in itself, but that it starts to invent new superficialities within within its own critique of the superficial stuff that it's criticizing, of the cannibalistic things that it's criticizing. It starts to eat itself by the end of the movie, and I'm not even sure if that's De Palma deliberately constructing his film to do that, or if the pairing of De Palma and Stone is just so implosive that the film had exactly 3 hours before it would just start devouring itself, which I think could be the best critique of capitalism possible if the film starts to actually eat itself as you're watching it. I think it's ultra violent. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's all things considered, a pretty excellent remake of um of the Hughes and Hawks Scarface, which we're gonna talk about in a little bit. Um, I think it gets some wild, like psychosexual qualities from the movie. I think it's really cool. I think it's really, really good. Um, and then here, I deliberately put The Godfather Coda here and not The Godfather Part 3. If The Godfather Part 3 were here, it would be a low C. But then Francis Ford Coppola recut the film a year or two ago and released it, and while it's not wildly different, that shit hits different, and I'm putting it at the top of the A. I I I don't like Godfather 3, but I really love Godfather Coda. Um, I'm obsessed with Andy Garcia in that movie. As Vincent Mancini, as Sonny's kid, like such a decent performance and a beautiful character. And I think that here's one where I think postmodern qualities could definitely be had, and I think it's more evident in Coda than Part 3. I think that maybe Francis Ford Coppola is also commenting on um on where New Hollywood was at in the 90s, how incorporated it was, how much of a corporate entity like those renegade filmmakers had become. And he's also commenting on the gangster genre as it was in 1990, by using these archetypes that are not just these characters, these pillars of the genre, like Michael Corleone, who used to be so strong and powerful, and showing them so weak and pitiful and remorseful. And I think that that's not a bad reading if we actually view like Francis Ford Coppola as an analog for Michael Corleone in the movie, considering his daughter Sofia Coppola played um, the Corleone daughter in it. I think that there's a lot of interesting things that Francis is not only saying about like life within that film, but in a postmodern way. I do think he's being kind of meta self-referential about his place within art, or his place within the genre that he's so expertly popularized and legitimized in a lot of people's eyes as well. I think there's a lot going on in Coda, and to me, it's top of the A tier. Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone is very masterful, and the recut, it's not even that different. It just hits so different. It's just so much better. I don't know why. It's just so much better, though. Like I said, 3 would be a low C at the bottom of the Cs. Let's see here. I do have the original Scarface here as well. I do like it. I view Bronx Tale more as a coming of age film. I definitely got to rewatch it. I really don't remember much at all about it, but it's held in extremely high regard. De Palma and Stone are an interesting pair, a better one than Tarantino and Stone with Natural Born Killers. Yeah, I was gonna save this for the ranking, but I'm pretty sure that Tarantino and Stone, did they get into a physical altercation over Natural Born Killers? Like, Stone's gotten into physical altercations with everybody, even like Cameron Diaz, so I wouldn't be surprised. But De Palma and Stone, that's a good pair. That's a fucking good pair. Uh, kind of wish they did it one more time, but Scarface was insanity, so maybe it's better off that they never paired up again. It feels like your analysis of Scarface is reflective of gangster culture itself. That might be true. It might be true. Yeah. Yeah, and then that's something that De Palma and Stone couldn't have, like, really considered too much, right? Like, not really. There's a lot of amazing elements to Scarface, and, its longevity, I think, would speak to what you're saying. I think that, that gangster culture, especially when I was, like, a teenager, um, I think gangster culture took a huge liking to Tony Montana around that time, and, without much irony, so I think that there's something in it. There's something there for sure. I hope you appreciated that analysis. Andy Garcia was so good in that movie. It's gotta be the best Andy Garcia performance, right? That or, he's great in The Untouchables, which we'll talk about in a bit too. He was superb. Um, Overshadowed by, like, by the criticisms of the movie itself, 'cause he's excellent. Uh, like, James Caan as Santino Corleone is one of my favorite performances of all time, so Andy, like, can't be there, but he definitely studied James Caan's performance. Like, he definitely studied it, and I think he did so well, and that's a really cool character, really interesting character. Because it's like in that film, Michael Corleone is having to, m make peace with the fact that he had one of his brothers killed, and then you get, like, the ghost of his other brother that was murdered. You get the ghost of Sonny and Andy Garcia, so it's him having to confront his past while it's going on, and that can be in a postmodern context too. This 1990 film is coming out the same year as, like, Goodfellas and all these other, like, and energetic kind of gangster movies, and it's kind of this old man being the Godfather Part 3 coming out at a time where the newcomers are starting to take a lot of chances and make names for themselves. Not that Scorsese was himself a newcomer. I just mean titles within the gangster genre. I think there's a lot of ways to view Godfather 3 or Coda. Coda is the preferred one. Deuce is Wild. Anybody remember Deuce is Wild? It's best if nobody does. Uh, cool cast, right? You know, Stephen Dorff, Drea Di Matteo, Fairuza Balk, Brad Renfro, Norman Reedus. Like a cool cast. I think it's kinda trash. I remember that, but there are some cool things in it. I'll put it at the top of the D. It's not like I do think it's garbage, but I put that here because when I was first getting into movies, people were, like, really into Deuces Wild, and I wasn't really sure why. It seems so stilted and contrived mostly. Um, it just doesn't work at all for me, and there really is no good philosophy in the movie. I like New Jack City. Put that at the end of the B tier. I like New Jack City a lot. Wesley Snipes is incredible in that movie. He's so good. Um, a really interesting and fun and I would call occasionally depressing gangster movie. New Jack City, I think, is rather excellent. Um, it's a lot better than King of New York. I'm not an Abel Ferrara fan at all. If I had to pick a best movie of Abel Ferrara, it would be Bad Lieutenant, and even that one I'm not really into. I don't really like Bad Lieutenant. I don't really like his composition much. I don't like his philosophy at all. Um, I don't really think there's too many redeeming qualities to his films. King of New York might be, like, his most accessible film, so there are parts of his philosophy that are cleaned up, I think, for mass audiences within it, but, and that's why it's at the top of the D tier, not the bottom. I don't like Abel Ferrara, and, Goodfellas is really well put together. Mm, I'll put it right beneath Coda. I really like Goodfellas, obviously, everybody likes Goodfellas. Goodfellas is great, it's wonderfully put together. We've gone over how wonderfully put together it is. Um, I think I kinda talked about it when I talked about Casino already, so I won't go into it too much right now. I think it's a cleaner version of Casino. I think that it is a stronger composed version of Casino as well. I think that, Tommy is a fascinating character to engage with because I see so much like James Cagney there, who we're about to talk about. There's so much James Cagney in Goodfellas in Tommy's performance, and it might be that archetype done in the best way, where that archetype is kind of viciously dispatched. And yeah, I think Goodfellas is really good. Quintessential '90s movie for sure. I think it informed the gangster genre a lot more than Godfather 3 or Coda, but, I prefer Coda over it. That's why it's second on the A tier. So, when I first saw A Bronx Tale, I didn't like it. I watched it recently, and I would say it is good. Alright. If you're all saying that I should kind of revisit it, I'll give it a go. I'll give it a go. Good to see you, Moonlight Orange. Is City of God here? No. No, I It's A tier for you? I wa I was never that crazy about the movie. I always thought it was, I'm glad you like it. I always thought it was, like, a little bit overrated, honestly. I don't hate it. If I did include it, it'd be on the C tier. I don't think I included it because I don't think I have anything really to add to the discourse for City of God, and I did think it was a bit overrated. But it would go C or D tier for me. Um, people used to worship that movie. People used to think that that was, like, the greatest thing in the world. It's kind of lost some of that esteem, hasn't it? And that might be a little sad. I used to see it everywhere. Like, it used to be referenced all the time. King of New York has an odd fan base. It's visually cool, and Walken at least has presence. True. But the narrative is non-existent, and the film is oddly campy. I think that oddly campy, like, fits in with a lot of Ferrara's stuff now that you bring it up. Um, and yeah, and that's Ferrara being accessible, you know? Like, I can't stand the addiction and, some of his movies where he's, free to be as unfiltered as he wants to be. I think he's a guy who's largely uninteresting, who thinks he's the most interesting person in the world. New Jack City is good. It's a fun movie. It is fun. It is fun. Chris Rock in that movie is actually outrageously good and fun. You know, he's a tragic character in the movie. Wesley Snipes just steals it though. As Nino, he's so fucking incredible in that movie, honestly. Now that movie is most known for the meme of him like having to shoot G Money or whatever and crying. That movie has been memed out of, film history, but I think it's really good and more people should actually watch it. Judd Nelson was even in that as, like, the fucking weird cop, you know, like, the fucking goofy psychopath cop. It has its charms for sure. The Public Enemy, Imma put, A tier. Imma put it above Miller's Crossing as well, but behind Goodfellas, because I think that Goodfellas in a lot since we know that Scorsese's a student of cinema, he's certainly a student of Cagney and of the early, original gangster pictures. I like to look at the original gangster pictures like Public Enemy and Little Caesar as just as informative to film itself as, like, the early, Universal monster ones were, you know? I think that Cagney and Edward G. Robinson and Paul Mooney were just as important as you know Lon Chaney and fucking Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, and I think they informed the medium in interesting ways, like equally stylistic ones as well. And I think that Scorsese definitely learned a lot from Public Enemy, and I think that through Tommy and Goodfellas, he kind of perfected the the Public Enemy story and archetype, and like what Public Enemy is so interesting about is that it really wrote the blue book, or wrote the playbook, or it made the blueprint on how to tell like the rise and fall of the gangster, the narrative that would all become familiar with. And Goodfellas is such an interesting gangster movie because it incorporates so many other gangster movies and elements and cinematic influences within it. And a Public Enemy is almost wholesale inside of Goodfellas. You know, James Cagney, I think, is a legend and extraordinary, and The Public Enemy is excellent. It is a bit like rudimentary in a lot of ways, but his performance is still lightning. It's still electric, and I kind of like the composition of it too. Was that a William Wellman movie? It was a William Wellman movie. He's very good and kind of underrated in cinephile circles. I think the composition is excellent, and I do love those early sound films where they weren't necessarily sure how to incorporate sound into their films, not just yet. Like that hadn't been fully decided. So they were kind of experimental and then kind of like restrained about sound, you know. The Public Enemy and M and like Vampire, I think, are really interesting early sound pictures because it's fascinating seeing how sound is first incorporated into the visual medium. Then My Blue Heaven, everybody. I like My Blue Heaven. I think it's funny. I'm gonna put it above American Gangster. I think My Blue Heaven's really funny when Steve Martin goes to, the witness protection program and Rick Moranis is kind of his, like, FBI babysitter. I think it's a hilarious movie, everybody, and I forgot it existed till I started putting this list together, and I typed in gangster movies on Google, and then My Blue Heaven appeared a million spots down, but I had to show some love for Steve Martin and Rick Moranis, so that's a charming movie. Then we got Scarface, the original. George Raft, right, and Paul Mooney. It's very good. I don't think it's as good as Gangs of New York, but it's gonna go on the B tier. I think it's very good. Um, Howard Hawks is someone who I wish I talked about a little bit more on the channel. I think he's easily one of the best filmmakers, and somehow he's been left out of a lot of discussions lately on the all-time greats. Howard Hawks is excellent. I think that Scarface is a really cool gangster movie, and I'm glad Nessie, My Blue Heaven, for real. It's great. It's great. I'm glad to see someone loving My Blue Heaven in the chat for sure. Give us the criterion already. But the original Scarface is really, I do love how it is the template for what I think is like a masterpiece of gangster filmmaking like Scarface, and you can see the steps and the beats here. But there are things unique to the original Scarface, like I think the black and white photography is pretty beautiful, and I think that that being kind of complicating the Public Enemy and Little Caesar in in the ways of the Greek tragedy, right? So we're like adding that to it, and like the kind of incestual components. I think were a bit daring at the time, and those early gangsters all had like cool things that they did, nuances, characteristics, actions that they would do. You know, James Cagney had a bunch of them, and people would mimic the way Cagney would do his bit. But George Raft in Scarface, remember him like flipping a coin all the time. And that was like the coolest thing ever. That's why, I mean, I liken these early gangsters to the early monster movies because, like, you get so much style from such a simple, repetitive action, and then that repetitive action becomes kind of powerful in and of itself because, you know, in Scarface, they're playing a game of chance with the largest stakes possible being their lives and the lives of others. So you have a character who's constantly almost keeping time of that fatalistic kind of game with death that they're all playing. And George Raft was extraordinary in the film. And now we have the Roaring Twenties, which I love to death. That's an A tier movie. That's right behind the Big Heat. Why I love the Roaring Twenties to death is, man, I should have included the Petrified Forest on here. That's like a B tier one, but you get Humphrey Bogart and James Cagney in the Roaring Twenties, and you get kind of like cinema's cinema's interpretation of prohibition at like in the 30s, right? Like you get like the 30s version of American history through cinema, and that's when you realize just how untrustworthy, you know, cinema is. And you can get into a few like accidental postmodern conversations here of like cinema is rewriting American history to fit its own stylistic frameworks, and that's what makes Roaring Twenties really interesting. And you gotta love the because ultimately, Humphrey Bogart plays the antagonist of the film, and it's great seeing James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart at oppositional ends. It's great. I do wish I included the Petrified Forest on here, Bogart's first movie that he ever acted in, where he plays like this super depressed and nihilistic gangster who interrupts, who holds Leslie Howard and Betty Davis hostage. Um, it's pretty meditative and it's pretty good. I just forgot it existed until I started talking about the Roaring Twenties. The Untouchables to me is A tier. I think this is a pretty strong genre. You know, it's got a lot of A tier movies. I'm gonna put it above Public Enemy, but behind Goodfellas. Um, the Untouchables, I do agree with the criticisms even that it is philosophically simplistic and very thin. You know, its idea of good and evil is beyond black and white, you know? Like, there are absolutely no gray areas really in The Untouchables. It's not a film of philosophical complexity, but there's a part of me that sort of digs that. Like, this is a tale of good and evil, and it's a gangster movie that feels kind of, out of place, you know? And it feels out of place because the film has such a strong moral compass that it's not going to betray, it doesn't care about Al Capone. It wants you to hate Al Capone, right? Our hero is Elliot Ness. And it's also a fun movie in the sense that one of De Palma's earliest regular actors, you might even call him a muse during his wannabe Godard period, was Robert De Niro. And he comes back to him decades later in The Untouchables. But I remember he'd worked apart from De Palma for so long that De Palma on the dailies was like, De Niro's not doing anything. He's playing Capone and he's not doing anything. He's sleeping on the job. He's not even trying to act. And then when he put the film together, he realized it was a phenomenal performance, and it really was. And also great Ennio Morricone score. So let me just get the other De Palma gangster movie out of the way. Carlito's Way, put just behind Little Caesar. I think that's the weakest of De Palma's gangster movies, but it's still really cool, stylistically really interesting, and yeah, Sean Penn is really good in that movie. Oh, John Leguizamo is extraordinary in it, but a lot of cool, sequences. That's definitely a, coolest thing about Brian De Palma is that his sequences speak to each other, like, pay attention every time you see split screen because it's, like, hyper literal, right? Because split screen normally, is the idea that 2 different things are happening simultaneous to the narrative that need to speak to each other so that you understand what's going on so the narrative can continue. That's literally what's happening throughout all of De Palma's movies, especially during his usage of split screen. It's so cool because all of his sequences are in constant visual dialogue with each other, and it makes his films just that much more immaculate in my eyes. I think that De Palma is one of the best. And the opening shot of Hawk Scarface, incredible. There's a lot of incredible stuff in Hawk Scarface. It is so good. It's so good. I don't even I think that you could see Hughes in like everything that Hughes produced as well. I think you can see a lot of Hughes. It's at least interesting, right? Because that's a good pairing. Hawks and Hughes, and then same with the '80s version of Scarface with De Palma and Stone. Yeah, a lot of incredible stuff in the original. Then here we go. I mean, this is a straight up postmodern kind of gangster movie called Shoot the Piano Player by Francois Truffaut. I'll let it go to the top of the B tier. Uh, it's wildly inventive, super energetic, and it's a lot like Pulp Fiction in the sense that it's a lot of these different archetypes kind of conversing with each other in deconstructionist methods that, and in Truffaut's case, transcend their original limitations. But that's not even a goal of Tarantino's. I don't even know what Tarantino's goal with making Pulp Fiction had to be just to make something fucking cool, right? But what he ended up doing was reinventing the wheel. um, I like it a lot. Donnie Brasco. It's kind of a forgettable mafia movie, but I think it's top of the C tier quality. I think it's better than The Departed and The Irishman. There's a lot of good stuff there. I like kind of like the casual paranoia of Donnie Brasco is really good, and it's probably Michael Madsen's best performance. He plays Sonny in it. He's terrifying in that movie. He's very good and cool. He's very cool. Cinema Cool still believes that certain kinds of gangsters are very, very cool. And I think Donnie Brasco is pretty good. Bonnie and Clyde, I mean, yeah, sure. I guess they're gangsters. Same with Public Enemy. I don't know if I consider Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde and Alvin Karpis, those types of people to be gangsters, but most lists do, and I wanted to keep them here so that I can finally knock The Godfather down a peg. I think Bonnie and Clyde's an extraordinary film. I think that it's one of the most violently cut and edited movies ever. The There's a decent amount of blood, there's a decent amount of violence, but, like, I flinch when these harsh cuts happen. It's peculiarly edited in a very ultra violent way that I think inflicts, like, some sort of damage to the viewer watching it. I also think Warren Beatty is incredible in the film, and it deals with, because it also examines, like, maybe, like, the new '60s idea of masculinity and sexuality because he's fighting a lot of like like, homoerotic impulses in that, or at the very least, asexual ones. Like, Warren Beatty's, Clyde is going through a lot of fucking psychosexual shit throughout the movie, and he's with Bonnie, who's Faye Dunaway, who's, like, beautiful and, like, almost starved for some sort of kind of, sexual accomplishment or escape. I mean, this could be a movie about 2 teenage kids, like, desperately trying to have an orgasm. You know, like there are very interesting ways to view Bonnie and Clyde, and that's when you can view all the cuts as kind of missteps on this ultra-violent psychosexual journey through adolescent sexuality. Bonnie and Clyde's really cool. Great, great film. To me, it's number one so far. I think it's great. And then Boys in the Hood, I think is a little overrated, but I don't think it's bad. I'm gonna put it above State of Grace, but behind Get Shorty. I think it's okay. I sound like a jerk. I do think it's dated though, and dated in ways that are unintentionally kind of funny to go back and watch now. I don't think it's aged as well as say like any of these other ones on the list, right? I think that Boys in the Hood kind of shows its age, and it's got a few bruises from how long it's been out. Now we got Port of Shadows, which like a really poetic French film by Marcel Carny, one of my favorite French directors. Put it just behind The Godfather, and I think I'm gonna have to live with that. Port of Shadows is beautiful, starring Jean Gabin. Um, about desperately trying to find like a single source of meaning in a world that is so cold and desperate and punishing. And I think Port of Shadows is an excellent Marcel Carny movie with with its French poetics. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's lovely. Textbooks have been written about Port of Shadows, so I won't go into it too much here. I also have a video on it. I have a pretty good video analysis of Port of Shadows. And now we are at A Better Tomorrow, John Woo film, which I think is great. You know, I'll put it just behind Mean Streets. I think A Better Tomorrow is really excellent. Uh, No complaints about it. I should do a video about some of John Woo's movies. I think I have one about The Killer, but that was years ago. I don't even remember what I said in it. But John Woo's an extraordinary action director, but a lot of people overlook that he does have a fairly good understanding of human nature. And maybe all action directors, all great ones should have like at least like a basic good understanding of human nature, but John Woo seems to have a pretty refined one sometimes, especially in A Better Tomorrow. Night and the City, I don't consider a gangster movie. It has a great Richard Widmark performance, and I saw it in a bunch of other ones. To me, it's straight up film noir. Great Jules Dassin movie. I think I included it just so I can say that I love Jules Dassin and I love Night and the City and Gene Tierney, and it's great. It's one of the most pessimistic noir movies I think I've ever seen, but that there's such a great amount of traumatic hopefulness to kind of associate yourself with when it comes to Richard Widmark's character. And Jules Dassin, I think, is still like a relatively underrated director who deserves a lot more attention and serious critical thought. And Night in the City is really good. Then we have Bugsy, which I'll put this one right behind Boys in the Hood. Bugsy's okay. Warren Beatty returning to the gangster genre to play Bugsy Siegel, and I think he's there with his wife. I think that's Annette Bening. I think they're married. I mean, I think I know that they're married. I don't even know why I'm asking that. It's just got so many of those forgettable '90s qualities to it. You know, there's something that really stands out compositionally. It's your standard rise and fall of a real life gangster. The performances are good. I guess I mentioned that they're married because the chemistry is really nice in the film. Um, so that's cool. And then we got Kiss of Death, which I'm gonna put above Mean Streets. Kiss of Death is awesome. Really fucking good. I just brought up Richard Widmark. His character in that movie, his maniacal laugh. Like I think the first time we see him, he he viciously murders an old woman, like, beats her and throws her down the stairs. That was outrageous when the film came out. That was controversial, chaotic, and obscene. His character is one of the most psychotic movie gangsters that we've ever got. You know, he's up there with a Tommy from Goodfellas, and I think that the composition kinda mirrors this as well. There are some kind of horror elements to the composition. I think it did a lot for the gangster genre very early on in its inception. Or popularization, I should say. And then Public Enemies, like Bonnie and Clyde, I'm not sure if I really consider John Dillinger a gangster, but I do consider Michael Mann worth talking about. I'm gonna put this one at the top of the C tier. Looks like Johnny Depp accidentally decided he ruled the C tier with Donnie Brasco and Public Enemies. I think there are quite a few issues with Public Enemies. Michael Mann is an insanely good director. There's a fun amount of philosophy within Public Enemies. I do think Michael Mann is a formalist, and I do think that I just don't think it hits well. I think there's a lot of Public Enemies that falls flat. A lot of the visuals that fall flat. I don't think it's a very I don't think it's an ugly looking movie, but I don't think it's a very good looking one either. And I think that his pacing is kind of bizarre. You know, it doesn't work. Like nothing about the movie really works. But the core, the philosophy at its center, um, is fun to interact with, and it's a philosophy that we've covered here before. This fatalistic philosophy, this kind of cosmically pessimist and fatalistic one. Is Drive a gangster film? Man, I think if people consider La Samurai one. Yeah, I see you there. La Samurai a gangster movie? I don't think so, but I saw it on other lists. Um, if Drive is probably more of a gangster movie than La Samurai, to be honest, because at least we like interact with gangs, right? And mobs. I put it around the same place that that La Samurai is. Drive is kind of I mean, it's largely a remake of La Samurai, if we wanna be honest, but I think it's excellent, you know, I think it's really good. I don't think that either La Samurai or Drive are really gangster movies, but I saw La Samurai on enough lists, and I saw Drive on a couple lists as well that I had to include it here. Um, yeah, and I think that, La Samurai as, like, a normal movie, you know, as the movie that it is, would be probably S tier, but as a gangster movie, I don't think it meets all the requirements. I agree it's okay for Boys in the Hood, but when Rick gets shot yeah, I'm not saying that doesn't work. I am saying, like, certain deliveries of that doesn't really work well with me anymore, doesn't play well. Maybe you've seen I've seen it, like, referenced and imitated so many times probably. It's kind of unfair to the movie, but that's the way of cinema. The Samurai and Drive are in the literally me genre. I like that. It's in the literally me genre for a lot of guys. Um, Samurai is so good. I don't think that Ryan Gosling can match Alan Delon's cute, sad, remote look. Though he comes close, but nothing compares. Nothing compares to Alan Delon doing that. But hey, this here is our tier list of gangster movies. I didn't know Bonnie and Clyde would be number 1 until we started doing this. I think it's a fascinating film. I'm kinda glad it's number 1. I don't even know if it's really a gangster movie, though. Gangster movies, judging by other people's lists and even from my own, there's such a loose definition of the genre that I don't know if there's any sense of organized crime, you know, conspiracy. I have no idea. It looks like anything can be a gangster movie these days. But let's see what's going on in the chat real quick. Public Enemies felt so empty. I think you're right, Nessie. It does feel empty, and you can't really say that about Michael Mann, right? Um, because Heat, like the thing about Michael Mann in Miami Vice, it's so one of the coolest things about Michael Mann is that he films these cityscapes that feel m- more populated than real life, right? He films these cityscapes at different at different speeds, at different camera settings to kind of conjure like this almost metaphysical feeling looking at these damn cityscapes. His blue cityscapes are always just so full of life and energy and pure cinema. And then when we get the Public Enemies, that's not there anymore. That's just nowhere to be found. And I don't think it's just switching to digital, right? Because he did that in Collateral, and I think that Collateral is a pretty alive movie. I think Collateral's alive, and populated. But how do you feel about other crime depth film Blow? Uh Man, I haven't seen it in so long. I think I'd like to spend some time with Johnny Depp and Penelope Cruz being, you know, sexy criminals. I'll give it a watch. Um, I don't remember thinking very much of it, but I probably also have not watched it since I was like 14 or 15. So, and I was harder to impress back then, if you can imagine that. And Rodrigo, I feel ya. We all feel on literally me on those films for sure, for sure. Didn't you like Only God Forgives? I did like Only God Forgives. Is it, but is that a gangster movie? I'm not sure. I don't even know. Yeah, okay. If everything's a gangster movie, I don't know. I like Only God Forgives more than Drive. I think. I think I do. It's at least, more intoxicating. The composition is really intoxicating. Oh, and Kristen Scott Thomas in that movie, that's probably more a gangster movie than Drive because you get those Oedipus complexes that are apparent in a lot of other gangster shows and films. That's probably more a gangster movie than Drive is. It would be at the very end of the A, I think. No, it would be higher than Eastern Promises. It would be somewhere in the A tier. For sure. That's a really good movie. I don't even particularly like Boys, but I respectfully disagree with your take. Fair enough. Lawrence Fishburne and Ice Cube are amazing in that film. I can't vibe with it anymore. I don't know. I don't know. I respect your take as well. I just can't vibe with it. Uh, just has not aged very well to me. I think it's lost its punch. But yep, we did the gangster thing. Now we're gonna move on to Quentin Tarantino time. Hey, chat. What what's on your S tier on Quentin Tarantino movies? What would you put there? And I decided to have a little bit more fun with this tier ranking, so I included movies that like he directed maybe a scene of, and also ones that he wrote, just to have a bit more fun. But Quentin Tarantino is a guy I've liked for quite a while. Obviously, I think that every fucking cinephile goes through a Quentin Tarantino period, and only the uncool ones grow out of it. All right? I'm not too cool for Tarantino. Tarantino, I think, is like a fascinating director who has made some of the most interesting American postmodern work ever in the history of art. Like the guy to me is pretty damn fascinating. What kills me the most is that he's such an accidental genius. Like, I don't even think that he's meaning to do the most interesting things. I don't even think he's trying to do the most interesting things in his films. It just happens. It just happened. He's just trying to make a cool fucking movie. And like I said, he ends up reinventing the wheel like all the time. Uh, I think he used to live by that Godard quote of all you need to make a film is a girl and a gun, right? Um, but then when I watch his movies, when a lot of like serious critics watch the movies, they're like, "Oh, there's so much complexity here." And I think that if you ask Tarantino about it, he'd be like, "Well, happens, happens, yeah, yeah." He's so frustrating to talk about because he's so accidentally like one of the most gifted directors of all time. At least when it comes to philosophy. Obviously, the composition, he had to work for that composition, but the depth and complexity of his work, I think, are total accidents. Death Proof. Death Proof. See, that's a dark horse Quentin Tarantino movie. A very dark horse movie. But I respect the fans of Death Proof for sure. As of now, Hateful Eight and Once Upon a Time, hell yeah. Kill Bill 2. I like that you said 2. I don't live in the same universe as Tarantino. I refuse to view Kill Bill as one movie, you know? In fact, I think they are 2 distinct movies. I don't think they're the same movie. I think if they were the same movie, it'd bring down the quality of both of them personally. I like the separations there. Kill Bill 2 is excellent. Yours are Inglorious Bastards, Reservoir Dogs, S tier. Big Reservoir Dogs fan. There's not a whole lot of S tier Reservoir Dogs fans out there. Jackie Brown A tier. Jackie Brown, that's like such a mature film. It's his most mature film to date, and he made it 20 years ago. I guess if you have a gun and there is crime, it's considered gangster. Yeah, basically, I think so. That's what I was coming to terms with. Hating on Tarantino is ridiculous to me. No matter what you think of the guy, the man can make a good, entertaining movie every time. Yeah, I just go one step forward further, and I'm like, it's not just good and entertaining; it's good, entertaining, and innovative, and just perfect. The guy makes a lot of great films. I expected Death Proof to be mid, but was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I first saw Death Proof at the movie theater for Grindhouse. And that's one of my favorite movie theater experiences. And the movie came out when I was still a teenager, right? So you got fake trailers by Eli Roth and Rob Zombie in them, and you got like Planet Terror and followed by Death Proof, and it was amazing seeing it on the big screen. It hasn't been that good since. Watching Death Proof in any other way than the big screen, it just feels so limited. It felt so wild to me when I saw it on the big screen. It is a film that suffers from rewatches because it just can't match. It just can't match the first my first experience with the film. But my God, that cast, man, Kurt Russell and Tracy Thoms, Rosario Dawson, of course, Rose McGowan. It's great. I agree. Pulp Fiction is S tier too. Yeah, for sure. A tribute to cinema in a different manner than his other movies. Death Proof, yeah. It's really cool because it's a tribute to even more than Pulp Fiction. Because Pulp Fiction, there are a lot of references from films that are well regarded. Like he's still playing with well defined archetypes from the gangster genre. Um, but Death Proof, it's a tribute to films that have never received the tribute before. It's a tribute to films most people think are garbage. I saw Breathless on lists too, and the only reason I didn't keep it on mine is because I feel like I've talked about Breathless in quite a few of my streams, and I've said all I can say about it. But that's what I've seen. You type in best gangster movies, and people will say Breathless is a gangster movie, and it's like, was he really? Which doesn't make sense because I thought the crime has to at least be organized, and Paul Belmondo played maybe the most disorganized criminal I've ever seen. Hardly a criminal, like a wannabe bogey, right? He was a wannabe criminal. So I don't even know. A lot of people consider Breathless a gangster movie, though. But here we go. Time to get to it. Hmm. I haven't even thought about this. I haven't even thought about this. Let me get the easy S tier out of the way first. Pulp Fiction for sure. We know that already. I think Pulp Fiction is an excellent postmodern film. And now we can go on to Hateful Eight. Oh man, I really, really like The Hateful Eight. I liked it a lot more a few years ago, but being on the A tier is not an insult. The Hateful Eight, I think, is making a lot of different statements about cinema, especially like the desolate harshness of the winter, right? I think that Tarantino's making a lot of statements about a dead genre, which obviously is the Western. I think that it's a lot of for like the ghosts. Like we're not even dealing with living archetypes from cinema anymore. We're dealing with their mummified corpses. We're dealing with zombies of a dead genre turning on each other in a haberdashery. The Hateful Eight. And I think it's amazing, and it's an amazing film. Walton Goggins, what a revelation! All right, incredible actor. Holy fuck, man. Jennifer Jason Leigh was also great in it, so was Sam Jackson. But Hateful Eight, I think, is another very, very interesting movie. Django, I hate Django Unchained. I think it's I think compositionally it's like extremely juvenile. I think it's mostly Tarantino doing an impersonation of himself and a poor impersonation of himself from Inglorious Bastards. Uh, I don't like it at all. And I don't like Leo's performance in it either. Jamie Foxx is all right, but like Christoph Waltz is boring in it. I think that's just Quentin doing a rather poor impersonation of himself. And I don't see a whole lot of heart in there either. And I don't even see because like what I like are these postmodern qualities, right? And of course it's a revenge fantasy. So he is playing with cinema's perception of America's history, like that is intrinsically postmodern. But I don't like the way that the archetypes are conversing um, with each other here. Uh, this is the film where I can most see that Tarantino has a kind of simplistic psychology because I can see like, oh, you just thought this was a cool movie. I don't see a whole lot of complexity here. Whereas most of his other films, accidentally a fucking genius. Django, I think he fell flat on his face and bled all over the concrete on that one. I don't like that one very much. I don't like Four Rooms either, but I think that his segment in it is a lot more interesting than Django Unchained was as a whole. If you haven't seen the his segment in Four Rooms, it is kind of fun. It is kind of fun. Uh, not fun enough to get into the sea. There's really not a whole lot going on in Four Rooms. Four Rooms was a joint effort with Rodriguez and two other filmmakers who I forget now, but it was four different kind of short films, all featuring the same bellboy played by Tim Roth, going to these different rooms and having different misadventures. And Tarantino's segment was probably the best in the whole movie, but the movie itself was not good either. Natural Born Killers, I'm gonna put in the B tier. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's obviously an Oliver Stone movie, and I'm pretty sure that Tarantino hates Oliver Stone over this movie, over how he kind of transformed his screenplay into something it ultimately wasn't. But I do like Oliver Stone's trademark, hyper obsessive, nearly psychopathic compositional methods. Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis and Robert Downey Jr. were born to be in that fucking movie. I've talked myself into putting it in the A tier, right behind the Hateful Eight. Oliver Stone, he's good. I don't hate Oliver Stone at all. He's cinema's greatest fanatic, right? He's great. And Natural Born Killers is ultra violent and disturbed, incredibly disturbed. And that's also a very postmodern movie still, because like the flashbacks of their lives are shown like, you know, with Rodney Dangerfield as if it's an old like 80s sitcom, right? With laugh tracks and everything. And like all the sets are so clearly superficial and artificial because you can see like crazy visuals going on outside that are unnatural. Um, and it's about the sensationalist idea of what crime is. It might be about it probably is a critique of crime culture within cinema, and just like Oliver Stone did with Scarface, it's such a good critique that it started to reinvent what the definition of what it was critiquing was. And Jackie Brown is to me an S tier movie, just behind Pulp Fiction. I think it's excellent. Like I said, I think it's Tarantino's most mature movie. And it's also interesting because that didn't come from Tarantino, right? It's we get to see Tarantino actually adapting a novel, Elmore Leonard's Rum Punch. We actually get to see what Tarantino does when he's adapting material, and his vision still completely comes through within the writing itself. But in Jackie Brown, much like Pulp Fiction, we get a slightly more mature and refined examination of cinema archetypes. Interacting with each other and interacting with the medium itself. It's just that while since it is so mature and refined, it's not as rebellious. It's not as uh it's not as casually chaotic as Pulp Fiction was, and I kinda live for that casual chaos of perfectly constructed cinema. But, I like From Dusk Till Dawn. It's so much fun, plus he looked so handsome in that film. Quentin did? I don't know if Quentin's ever looked, like, handsome, you know? George Clooney and Salma Hayek were pretty attractive in that movie, though. Django might be my least fave of his. Still like it, though. It's my least fave, too, and I just don't like it. Just have no use for it. And Kill Bill Volume 1, to me, is A tier, right beneath The Hateful Eight. Oh, man. He grew so much, uh, as a director between Jackie Brown and Kill Bill, and there was, like, a significant, um he did take a significant break from films between Jackie Brown and Kill Bill, right? I think that those are the 2 movies that follow each other. Uh, Tarantino learned a whole lot of new methods, and we see this fun, like, rhythmic, actually visually innovative, film like Kill Bill. I think it's extraordinary movie. I think that Kill Bill Volume 2 is better, though. I think it goes right behind Pulp Fiction on the S tier. And I do like to split these movies up because I do think that they are thematically separate. I don't think they are the same. Like, of course, their like revenge carries over to both movies, but I think that Kill Bill 2 is a pretty kind of like so as we've talked about with his postmodern sensibilities and these different archetypes conversing with each other, they have conversations and they have shootouts and stuff, but they've never really meditated until Kill Bill Volume 2. And Kill Bill Volume 2, these kind of larger than life archetypes are actually meditating over their own like fatalistic existences. Like she has to get her revenge, right? And she has been wronged and betrayed by by the artistry itself. And we're actually meditating on that now. And I think that's what makes Kill Bill Volume 2 so interesting, especially and this meditation comes into full depressing focus when we spend some time with Michael Madsen's character, Buddy or whatever. It's so depressing and sad that that this this beloved archetype is like living in a trailer and just having to take shit at the strip club he works at, right? Like there's a lot of meditations going on in um in Kill Bill 2, and I really like that a lot. I am doing well, why begin? I hope you're doing well as well. Thank you for joining us. Kill Bill A going to S. Um, I like to split them up. Kill Bill 1 is A. I think if they were the same movie, they would feel unbalanced in such a way that would bring them both down to B. I think splitting them up benefits both of the parts. The politics of Django repel yet fascinate me. I think you consider Tarantino's accidental genius is tied to that old gangster film about prohibition you mentioned earlier. You might be right. You might be right about that. Um, Django is when I think like his actual vision comes through the most, which doesn't benefit much because it's his accidental genius that I'm here for. I mean, he's a fascinating kind of character just because this is a guy who learned everything about human existence, right, from a television screen, from the tube. And that's where he learned his moral compass. That's where he learned what he found attractive. That's where he learned right and wrong in his politics, and they are all cinema derived. And once you see that kind of like circular uh way of postmodern thinking like appear within his films, it's transcendental to me. Kill Bill is is an epic explosion of his id. That's a pretty fun way of putting it. It's a pretty fun way of doing that. Sin City, he directed one scene, right? And it's a scene where Benicio del Toro has like part of a gun stuck in his forehead, and Clive Owen is imagining talking to his corpse in the car. You can tell it's his scene. He does have a singular vision, and I am impressed that you can still tell that Quentin directed that scene and not Robert. Um, Sin City is a C tier movie to me, though. Uh, I think it's frustratingly loyal to Frank Miller's work, but it's still cool. It's still a cool movie. Uh, it's just Rodriguez lacks a lot of postmodern sensibilities. He's just very lucky to have worked with Tarantino on From Dusk Till Dawn and Sin City, and extremely fortunate to have made The Faculty, which was written by Kevin Williamson. And he's able to just make some very interesting postmodern movies where I don't think he himself is a postmodern thinker. Sin City, I think, should have been a cool postmodern movie. I think if Tarantino made it instead of Rodriguez, it probably wouldn't have looked as kind of imaginative as it did. It might have been a bit more subdued. Maybe I don't think Tarantino would have ever made it, to be honest. But Sin City, I feel like we should have really had a true postmodern examination of these different noir characters, especially when neo noir was coming back. You know, with Sin City and Brick, and there were some other neo noirs at that time period that I'm just blanking on right now, because noir comes at like very fucked up times in American history. Noir first came into full focus following World War II, and soldiers coming home living with trauma and unemployment, right? Living with like the idea of women in the workplace now, terrifying. I don't know, but film noir comes at a very interesting points in America's history. And I think that neo noir popped back up in the 70s, dealing with the aftermath of Vietnam with films like Chinatown, right? And it popped back up after 9/11. Film noir comes back into the public view when the public is dealing with some trauma and it needs some more gray characters to deal with. I just thought that maybe Sin City is too genuine of a tribute to these characters. I kind of want a bit of deconstruction and reinvention of those archetypes. But I do think that noir is interesting to view when it pops back up in popularity. And Sin City wasn't bad. It's just I don't think that one's aged too well either. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I'm gonna put that at the top of the B tier. Like, what the fuck, right? Like, it's really interesting and cool. And it's like, Quentin, you get to make your love letter to Hollywood. Then what the fuck is Tarantino even saying, right? That's where it gets so fascinating. So, like, this is your grand statement on classic Hollywood, of the Hollywood of the '60s that you love so much, that informed so much of your worldview, which is a cinematic view. What exactly are you saying? Are you saying that cinema rights the wrongs of the treacherous past of humans? Like, what exactly are you saying? I think it's a fascinating kind of film that deserves a bit of study, because it's extraordinarily articulate. I don't think it's just another revenge fantasy. I don't think it falls under the same umbrella as Django Unchained, for instance, because I think that there's a fair amount of maybe not, definitely not cynicism, but I get a decent amount of anger from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I feel like we don't normally get like an angry Tarantino, but I feel with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I feel like a lot of anger in it. I think that Tarantino's angry. And I'm just speaking aloud right now. I don't have any reasoning behind that necessarily, but I think it's a darker feeling film to me, because I think Tarantino's mad. I was wondering what Sin City was here for. I had no clue about that. Yeah, he came in and directed a scene. At least Robert Rodriguez is a badass, right? Because he brought in Quentin to just direct that one scene, special guest director Quentin Tarantino, and then he also gave Frank Miller directing credit, co-directing credit, even though he didn't actually direct. He just, but in Robert's mind, he's like, well, I'm just lifting exactly what's on the page of the comic. So he gave him credit, but he's a badass in the sense that he lost his director's guild card because he did that. Because like, you're not supposed to do either of those two things. And he's like, well, fuck you. I can make movies whenever I want. I don't need this cute little card. I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 4 times, and it just got greater with rewatches. I think it's most joyous. I think I got a lot of anger from it, man. I think it is a very emotional film, and maybe I'm not used to, Tarantino being that truly emotional with it. I don't think it's joyous or delightful. I think that over even the film's funniest moments, there's this, hanging sensation of dread. I don't think he's angry. Old man yelling at the hippies. I don't think it's as tongue I don't think it's as there's tongue in cheek to the performances in it, there's tongue in cheek to a large part of the framework of it, but I don't think that I don't know if that's his self-insert or if I think his self-insert is the bullet in their heads. He is fond of an era, long gone that counterculture took from him. Yeah, and I think he's angry about that because it's not just, 'cause it's a cinematic era, which to him I think is more important than what is talked about in Django and Inglourious Basterds. I think that Tarantino is that much of a little psychotic cinephile. So I think that Tarantino felt like he knew the era from Once Upon a Time, like, intimately, and he's just so angry to me. I get a lot of anger from it, maybe because whoever said it was emotional earlier, Tarantino's not the most emotional guy, and maybe I was taken aback by seeing some of his emotionality being presented in such a way. He seems to understand it, but at the same time, he's angry about it. There's just anger there, I swear. But those are good points, Rodrigo. Once Upon a Time gets better, each watch for me too. I don't get angry, maybe like, I don't personally get angry, um, but I get the feeling like I'm hanging out with a guy who is angry, like, for 2.5 hours, and I'm kind of uneasy about it. Um, it's easy to see where his anger comes from. Maybe bitter or sad at his kind of film becoming extinct. I get bitter and sad as well, but, the punishment he lays on those Manson kids, and I think that the way that he so adoringly frames, Margot Robbie in it, Sharon Tate in it, it it is so lamenting and sad, right? Because, like, no matter how much you rewrite history in cinema, you can't actually rewrite history itself, so I get anger from it. I still get that Tarantino's angry that this, perfect blonde fucking movie idol couldn't continue to live, as a starlet. Because it's not like we hung out with, Anne Frank and Inglorious Bastards or anything. That was, like, very real, and, that was a very real situation, dealing with Sharon Tate, and even, like, its depiction of Roman as, like, this effete fucking nonentity was funny, of Polanski. I think the overall statement is that the film lets him fulfill his fantasies, outside the real world. Sure, but maybe in Once Upon a Time, I get the idea that he does recognize a real world exists for the first time. Mad because it reflects the changing and yeah, exactly. But, like I said, I think that cinema is his worldview, so it's not just someone losing his hobby, it's not just a director losing his interest or his profession. I think it's literally a human being, it'd be like a Christian losing God. It's a human being losing the foundation of his entire worldview. So, like, that anger has to be there, mad and becoming obsolete. Yeah, but if that's where he derives, I think at least he used to derive a lot of meaning from life. Then he has to admit that his life will soon become not only obsolete but meaningless. Yeah, I really dislike Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I don't think it's saying anything. I think it's an angry film that is pretty articulate and does say quite a bit. Um, I think it's a solid B tier Tarantino movie for sure. To me, the way he goes so over the top with the hippies beating feels like a meta response to the critics who criticize his violence and its effect on the audience. I'm sure that's a part of it, but when I see these two dying elements of old Hollywood murdering counterculture itself. I see that more as him being angry at what he feels ultimately took cinema gold away from him, which is fine. You know, it's a very interesting film to me because like everyone says it's like cool and interesting, but like people need to step back and ask exactly what it's saying, and then why is it saying it this way though? Like it's really cool. Glorious Bastards is better though. The best of his weird little revenge fantasy movies. Put it above Natural Born Killers. The writing in that is superb. My God, and so many revelations there. Be it Christoph Waltz or Michael Fassbender. Oh my God, so many great moments there. Of course, being a Jew myself, I live for that Jew bear moment. And I think it's really well filmed, and I love that he threw Eli Roth, possibly the biggest cinematic bone in the history of friendships. Inglorious Bastards is cool. Is cool, and I think it fulfills the postmodern beats a bit better than Django, well, a lot better than Django Unchained, because it's ultimately cinema itself that destroyed Hitler, right? In that theater, all the Nazis. It's the burning of film itself. So I think he's literally showing that film rewriting history within his own work. Or burning history down. I mean, not rewriting it, but destroying it, destroying its reputation, restoring its identity, destroying its image, and then that image being of a very cruel, awful fascism. So I like it a lot. But man, that one scene, I think it is Fassbender's scene, right, where he does the three instead of the three or whatever. Oh my God, it's one of the best scenes Tarantino ever wrote. That is just engaging, and I feel like that's a scene that Tarantino worked on for years or something. I feel like he went over that and over that and over that and perfected it. Because that shit should be studied. That's incredibly set up. Like the narrative contained within that scene, the narrative of the scene itself is just mwah, fucking extraordinary. But anyway, now we're at Death Proof, which I'm sorry to the chat, but I'm gonna have to put at the end of B, mostly because it doesn't age very well. And even then, I'm being nice because there's a part of me that wants to put it at the top of C. And maybe, dude, maybe I should. Maybe I should put it at the top of C because it is a grindhouse movie. Honestly, it's a grindhouse movie. Um, I think. How about this to fans of Death Proof out there? If I put it anywhere above a C, then Quentin Tarantino made like a bad grindhouse movie because all grindhouse movies should never be above a C. Death Proof has a lot of problems in it, but it's very difficult to get into discourse about Death Proof because Tarantino is such a great pupil of grindhouse and schlock cinema, and every issue with Death Proof can be argued away on the basis that Tarantino was doing it on purpose to make the quintessential, or like to make your average grindhouse movie quintessential or average. I went like extremes with that kind of thing, but Death Proof does have I love car chases, right? It's the best car cinema I've seen since like Vanishing Point, probably. Or sorry, Fast and Furious does pretty cool shit. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I'm just saying that Death Proof is high C, probably the top of the C, and where it belongs, where it was designed to be. And then True Romance, I don't think is as good as everyone says. I'm putting it behind Death Proof. I don't think it's better than Natural Born Killers. I don't think Tony Scott's a very good director. Um, I think it is most interesting to watch as like a Tarantino, if you're a fan of Tarantino. Uh, it's fun. It's fun, but there's the problem, right? I think that's the best example of it because Oliver Stone has some postmodern qualities to him. So I think he made Natural Born Killers even more postmodern deliberately than Tarantino would have, or at least he recognized and valued the postmodern components of the script he was given. But True Romance, to get someone like Tony Scott, who directs it, and I think completely drains the film of all the postmodern qualities, all those accidentally brilliant things about Tarantino's writing. And I think he dilutes it into something that is like really conventional to me. Um, it's fun, and that's it. Like that's what you get. That's what you get when you don't have Tarantino behind the camera or like another director of notable skill. You don't get something postmodern anymore. You get a pretty fucking straightforward, goofy little self-referential tale. Honestly, the tension in *Inglorious Bastards* is unmatched. Not even *Hateful Eight* reaches it. Oh yeah, the tension's wild, especially in that scene with the that I was talking about and referencing. The one thing I can live without is people fucking quoting Christoph Waltz's character all the time. Like, fuck off, please. Interesting theories and analysis of Hollywood out there. One I really like is about Rick Dalton becoming a man. Also, the heart of the film seems to be the bromance love story between Rick and Cliff. I mean, I think the heart of the film is that scene of Margot Robbie or Sharon Tate enjoying the film. Honestly, I think that's the heart of the film. But I'm sure there are a lot of good interpretations out there. I haven't really put a whole lot of thought into it. That's why my ideas might be a little bit half baked, but I think I'm onto something. Regardless, I love the first half of Death Proof. It feels so much like a slasher film right out of '81. It does feel pretty authentically within that era. I think the second half's really cool too. I love Rosario Dawson a lot. Maybe I'm just like biased, but I like kind of the revenge and action element of the second half quite a bit. The build up in Death Proof towards the car crash is great. Yeah. Yeah, and we get something that Tarantino never did before because, he's been charged with being kind of like obsessed with masculinity in a large way. We just get girl talk for like fucking an hour and a half, right? We just get girl talk, which is fun to hear what Tarantino's idea of cinematic girl talk is. Sometimes it's ludicrous and sometimes I think it's like pretty cool, pretty nice. Haven't seen True Romance in forever, but don't remember being too impressed. No, no, I think that the entire cast does a good job. It's just that Tony Scott is a filmmaker without a psychology, truly, honestly. The most penetrating his psychology was in Top Gun, and that must be for all the wrong reasons, you know? Top Gun being basically used as propaganda, as a enlistment material. And it's like, yeah, good job, Tony Scott, I guess. Psychology really came through there. I mean, just look at how many people signed up. I'm on a tangent now, but signed up for the Air Force or whatever, the Navy after that fucking movie came out. Tony Scott's done a lot of damage. From Dusk Till Dawn, above True Romance. And I'm gonna put Sin City above True Romance too. From Dusk Till Dawn is a lot of fun. um, obviously, like two different fucking movies in one. It's chaotic. It's extremely juvenile. I liked it the most when I was 15, and I think I should always hold on to how I felt about the film when I was 15. There aren't a whole lot of well, I mean, there's not a whole lot of interesting things in it either. Um, it's it's C tier. It's just C tier material. Who doesn't love the Salma Hayek dance? Who doesn't think that George Clooney isn't the coolest motherfucker in the world in that movie? But like, if we're here to talk about complexity, there's not much to go into, which is normally the way that Rodriguez goes. I think that Rodriguez's best movie was The Faculty. So he's extremely fortunate to have worked on that Kevin Williamson script. I think his best film was The Faculty by far. I love The Faculty. It's great. From Dusk Till Dawn is like so much fun. You know, I'd be a complete fucking no fun total bummer if I put it at D or anything, but I'd be being just sentimental if I put it anywhere higher. There's not a whole lot to the film. Tarantino, not a bad actor. Let's be real, not a bad actor. He played Richie pretty well. Pretty disturbing cat. Um, Your take on Inglorious Bastards makes me see more clearly how the politics of Django are held captive by Tarantino, by his use of cinematic form, if that makes sense. I think it makes sense. I think it does. I might I might like it if you elaborated, but I think it makes sense. I don't think you're far off. I think you're onto something is what I'm saying. Hey, Jason, best gangster film for me would be Performance. That was on a bunch of lists too. It's good. I don't remember where I put it. Theoreticians have wrote entire books on this film. It's pure art. It's really fucking good. I didn't put it on my list because, you know, because I'm bad at it. But it would have been A tier probably. Didn't you see Tarantino's subtextual analysis of Top Gun? Am I forgetting something vital? Horrid films. Remind me. What am I forgetting? Does he have an actual analysis of Top Gun, or did he reference it in one of his movies? What even is his subtextual analysis of Top Gun? Just that it's, like, gay or something? What is it? And lastly, we have Reservoir Dogs. Top of the bees. Top of the bees. Good, fucking great debut. I know that it's literally Ringo Lamb City on Fire, and I don't give a fuck. I think it's so much better than Ringo Lamb's movie. I think that the film is oozing with new cinema cool. I think that that's like putting a megaphone over your debut, like, here I am, world. Get used to it. Nothing was ever the same. I think Reservoir Dogs is really fun. It's especially really cool seeing like the first time he's playing with these tried and true archetypes, and he's doing it in the most outwardly deconstructionist way ever. He puts them not only at odds against each other, but in probably the worst case scenario, right? They're like one's fucking bleeding to death, another's dead. In fact, he's dead because he's playing Mr. fucking Brown. Like the director dies off screen, and these fucking archetypes are left to their own devices, which is just murdering each other. Oh my god! And of course, stuck in the middle with you, Mr. Blonde's amazing torture scene where he cuts the cop's ear off is just one of the greatest scenes ever. You know, not gonna lie, it'd probably be B tier just for that. You see here, it was a movie he acted in, and yes, it's a gay theme. It's very funny. The fuck, what else did he act in? What else did Tarantino act in, you guys? And I'll figure that out in a second, I guess. Where would he have said this? I don't know. I probably have seen it. I have no idea. But it looks like go full screen. It looks like this is our Tarantino tier ranking. Tarantino tier. That's kind of difficult to get out of my mouth. But looks like we got Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill, and Jackie Brown in S. I got Hateful Eight. Kill Bill 2 in S. Kill Bill 1, Hateful Eight, and Glorious Bastards and Natural Born Killers in A. Reservoir Dogs and Once Upon a Time in B. And then Death Proof in C. And then Django in D. I think if we can learn anything, it's that Tarantino is the best at directing his own his own scripts. He's the best at it. But yeah, that's it. I hope that you have some similarities with my list here. But yeah, I don't think it's too bad. And let's see here. Sleep With Me. That's where the Top Gun thing is from. So I've never seen it, but I just typed in Sleep With Me from in the fucking Google search, and the first thing that comes up is a YouTube clip about Top Gun, Quentin Tarantino about Top Gun. Okay. All right, makes sense. He's not like a terrible actor, right? Like he's not terrible at all. Um I even like his scene in Desperado a lot, you know? He's not bad. I think he thinks he's a much better actor than he is. No, which is fine. That's funny. Oh, man. Thank you, Rodrigo. All right, yeah. Thank you, Hard Films. But looks like we did it. We did a gangster, the best gangster films of all time, and we did a Tarantino ranking. Um, I had fun. I went into this a bit blind, and I didn't know exactly what I was gonna say. I don't know. I never know what I'm gonna say about anything until I press the record button normally. So, or the live button now that I've been live streaming. I've been enjoying live streaming. Not gonna lie, I've been enjoying it. I've been liking having you guys around, um, giving me ideas, teaching me things. I've enjoyed conversing with you guys. As you guys are fucking super insightful very often, and it's really fun to engage with you. So, yeah. Yeah. I really have nothing else to say but that. I think Quentin Tarantino is really good. I often find myself in cinephile circles that like to pretend that they're way too cool for Tarantino, or that Tarantino is something you go through when you're 14 and you never look back. And if you start asking them about Tarantino, you can realize that they never ever fully investigated his movies. They're just acting too cool. And I hate those kinds of cinephile groups, man. I find myself in pretentious cinephile groups all the time. But I'm glad you guys are enjoying these live streams. It's fun to see other people's tastes. Exactly. I like engaging with you as well. I like seeing what your tastes are too. It's funny to see your thoughts on these directors you've been doing. They're so opposite in terms of the fans the directors have compared to the directors of movies I found your channel through. Yeah, yeah. I'm still prime like well, I don't know when you found my channel, but, right now I'm still, like, primarily devoted to, like, teen shows and teen movies. I think those are, like, the best. And fuck, if you wanna talk about pretentious cinephile communities, they don't give those movies any chances at all. Any, you know? You wanna see someone with a straight face? Bring up Dawson's Creek to a fucking Criterion Channel subscriber. They're thoroughly unimpressed. I will appreciate both sides. So it's cool. Hell yeah. That's the best way to do it. Thank you so much. This was indeed fun, and you always give me so much to think about. That means a lot, ML. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and yeah, I hope I gave you some stuff to think about, whether I was right or wrong. I hope I gave you a lot to think about here. You gave me stuff to think about as well. Your last comment on Django being held captive by Tarantino. I'm gonna have to think about that a bit more, and hopefully you can provide a bit more elaboration for that because now I'm thinking, and it's dangerous when I think. This was fun. Thanks. Thank you so much for coming here. Um, you're really awesome. Specifically, you're really awesome. Thank you for coming. Anime movies tier list next. Oh man, you want to see an entire? You want to see 50 movies on a D list? Let's fucking do it. Straight to the Fs, all of them. But oh, that would be funny. I don't know what's next. In the last video we did like best horror directors, and that was like a viewer. So that was like a suggestion from one of you guys. But I don't know what's next at all. Yeah, I wanted to elaborate, but I didn't know how much time was left. Next time. All right. I'll hold you to it. Next time, elaborate for me. Thank you so much for coming. I'll come up with something though. I really appreciate everyone who's been watching. Thank you so much. I believe that's it for me. I'm gonna go have a bite to eat or something. You guys be safe out there, okay?